So I, 26 female, have been married for almost 2 years. My husband, Kyle, 26 male, and I met around the time that we graduated from college at a frat party. We were in different departments and I had seen him around college, but we didn't really interact much. Our friends had dragged us to the party because it was one of the last before the semester ended, and both of us were having a terrible time there as both of us are kind of introverted and parties are not really our thing. Especially once people were getting drunk and throwing up all over the place. So I kept insisting that I wanted to leave, and my friends didn't. But they saw Kyle was leaving and asked him to walk with me instead because I also wanted to leave. So we ended up living together and we started talking on the walk back to campus, and it was nice. So we exchanged numbers at the end of it. Then we started texting, and soon after graduation, we started dating. We were in a relationship for almost 4 years before he finally popped the question, and we ended up getting married. We have had our ups and downs, but most of it has been really petty and unimportant. There have been no big fights, not when we were dating, and not even after we got married. I never suspected him of cheating or anything of the sort because it just never occurred to me. And his behavior around me was always perfectly normal. I thought he was in love with me, and he insists that he still is, but clearly that was not the case because otherwise he would not have cheated on me. About 3 weeks ago, Kyle came back home with a little girl in his arms who I had seen very few times before. But I realized that it was the daughter of one of his friends. He didn't offer up any explanation himself when he walked into the house after work with the child in his arms. So I had to ask him what this was all about. He didn't tell me anything until he had set the girl down on the couch with his phone and put on something, and then he had taken me aside to the bedroom. The way he was behaving was really freaking me out, and I could tell that something bad was about to happen. I just had a sixth sense telling me that something was very off. Once we were inside the bedroom, he sat me down and told me that he had something that he had to tell me. He started off by telling me that he still loved me more than anything in this world, and that what he was about to tell me might make me feel otherwise. But I needed to remember that we were meant to be together. Instantly, I knew that the child was his, but I still let him talk because I was hoping against all odds that there would be some innocent explanation for the little girl sitting in our living room. However, when he started talking, I knew that it was all over. He told me that it had all started a week before we were supposed to get married, because that's when it had started really hitting him that he was getting married, and now he had to spend the rest of his life with one person. Like most guys do, he got cold feet and was about to make a run for it the night before the wedding, but one of his friends caught him in the act. Now, this friend of his who passed away recently, let's call her Nikki, had been smoking in the parking lot and was apparently on a phone call outside because that was the only place she could get a signal, which is why she had been able to catch him before he got into his car. She had noticed the duffel bag that he had packed for the quick getaway and figured out what was going on. So she tried to calm him down and tell him that it would all be fine. She even got into the car with him and tried to talk him out of it. But they ended up making out in the car, and he and Nikki had known each other for a really long time since they went to high school together, and I had always suspected that Nikki had a thing for him. But there was no proof of it, so I never said anything about it. She would always be nice to me as well, so I had no reason to bring it up and make a big deal out of it. But I always had a gut feeling that she thought of Kyle as more than a friend, and had I not been part of the equation, she probably would have tried to get with him. Anyway, Kyle told me that he ended up spending the night before our wedding with her, and they slept together because he was nervous, and she was the only person who had been around. He said that he hadn't been thinking straight and that as soon as he realized what he had done, he decided to apologize to her and leave so he could come back to his own room and get married to me because I was the one person he actually loved. He left her room at around 4 in the morning and came back to his own room immediately, so nobody saw him leave at any point, and so he had been able to keep this a secret for quite a long time. Nikki also didn't bring it up later, and they decided that whatever had happened on the night before our wedding had been nothing but a huge mistake, and so they were never going to talk about it ever again, because she knew that he was happy with me and he had made up his mind that he wanted to be with me. I wish I could say that that was it, but unfortunately, a few weeks later, Nikki reached out to Kyle yet again because she was pregnant. That's when everything started going topsy-turvy because they hadn't accounted for this happening at all, and both of them had been caught off guard by the news. But Nikki decided that she was going to keep the baby and had given Kyle the chance to either walk away from having a relationship with the child or he could choose to be an active part of the baby's life. And Kyle chose to co-parent their child together. He didn't sign the parental rights that he had and was there for Nikki every step of the way. He would attend most of the appointments that she had with her gynecologist, and even on the day of her birth, he was with her all along. It was quite easy to fool me because every time he had to be with Nikki, he would just tell me that he had to go on a work trip and he would be gone. I knew that she was pregnant. I had also congratulated her, and even on the day of our first anniversary together, she had been invited to the party. But little did I know that the baby she brought to the party was my husband's. The story that Nikki told everyone was that she got pregnant while hooking up with a dating app match. And the guy didn't want to be a part of the pregnancy and the child's life, so she was a single mom now. The story was believable enough, so nobody questioned it, and her daughter had very normal features, so it never occurred to me that she looked similar to Kyle. Kyle and Nikki had been in touch even after the wedding, and she had even been to our house several times after that on many occasions. I never noticed anything off about the way they behaved around each other, so it was quite easy for them to fool me. Nikki rarely ever brought her daughter along, so I would only see her in pictures, which is why I hadn't been able to recognize her when my husband brought her in last time. He told me that he had been supporting them and would visit them every chance he got just to be close to his daughter. He promised me that there was nothing between him and Nikki, and they had ended their affair after that night before the wedding. They had never been anything before or after it. It had just been one night, but he had continued to stay in touch with her because they had a parental agreement and shared custody of their daughter. He also had to pay child support, and he really wanted to be a part of his daughter's life, so he couldn't walk away from her. Unfortunately, Nikki passed away a month ago in a deadly car accident because a drunk truck driver had collided with her car. Their daughter had been living with her parents for the past few weeks, but now Kyle had decided that it was finally time to tell me the truth. And he wanted me to accept him and his daughter so she could have a mother and we could be a family together. After I had heard his entire story and processed it, I had no idea what he was going to tell me next because I was in shock. But the second he told me that he expected me to actually raise his daughter as my own after he just told me that he had cheated on me and slept with his friend the day before we were supposed to get married, I flipped out. I started screaming at him hysterically and told him I was never going to accept him or his daughter because what he had done to me was something that I could never forgive. I told him that the fact that he had even asked me and expected me to say yes showed me just how entitled he was and how tone-deaf and insensitive he could be. I had a total breakdown, and I remember cursing him out while throwing everything in the room here and there. I had a full-blown meltdown, and once it was over, I decided that I was not going to let him live here anymore. While I had been having my episode, Kyle was just standing around trying to calm me down by saying meaningless things so that we could work out and that he knew I didn't mean anything I was saying because I was just angry. He told me that, even though his daughter was partly Nikki's, it was also partly his, and he knew that I would come to accept her in time. So I told him I had nothing against the little girl because none of this was her fault, but he should have known better and he shouldn't have cheated. I told him that he had to pack his stuff and leave because I was not going to let a cheater like him live with me in this house, and my decision was final. I also told him that he had to take his daughter with him and go, because no matter what, I was never going to accept the two of them in this family. What's done was done. He couldn't change it, but I wasn't going to put up with it either. He tried to guilt trip me by saying that I had made promises to him when I got married to him, and I had to be there for him in his bad times. But I told him that all those memories went out of the window as soon as he told me that he had cheated on me right before making the same promises to me. I had signed up for a husband, not for this. He kept trying to talk me out of it, but I told him that I had already made up my mind and he couldn't even disagree because the deed of our house was under my name since it had been a wedding gift from my dad, and I had every right to kick him out. So after a lot of arguing and back and forth, he finally decided to start packing his things so he could leave. I had made it abundantly clear that I didn't want him or his daughter in my house anymore. He was very upset as well, and he thought that I would have a heart and be understanding about this. But I told him I didn't really care. He had betrayed me and had continued to betray me for 2 years by not telling me the truth. If Nikki hadn't passed away in that terrible accident, he probably wouldn't even have told me the truth at any point. And I would have just spent my life with a cheater, never getting to know about his daughter or his affair. And I didn't even know if he was telling me the truth about it, being just one night that he had spent with Nikki. For all I know, it could have been a long, drawn-out affair, but now I would never know about it because she was gone and nobody else knew about them either. So there were a lot of loose ends in the story, and unfortunately nobody would ever be able to tie them up for me. But it was fine, because I didn't want to be a part of the story anyway. I was done with him the second he told me that he had cheated. Even while he was leaving, he told me that I was being heartless by kicking him out along with his daughter. And it did make me feel a little guilty because his daughter had no idea what was happening. And she was just a little girl, so she didn't really deserve any of this. But I knew that she would be taken care of. Kyle was by no means poor or anything, so once he got kicked out, he would probably either just go to a hotel or live with his parents, so I knew that she would be safe and sound with him. She just wouldn't be living with me. And I don't think there was anything heartless about it. Before he left, I told him that this might teach him a lesson about honesty, and if he ever got married again, he would know better than to lie to her about something so big. Then I slammed the door shut in his face as he waited for a cab outside. Once I had made sure that he had left, I finally allowed myself to actually cry, and I think I sobbed for hours that day. I also called my parents after he left and told them everything, and they told me I could come and live with them, or they could come and live with me, just so I would have company and I wouldn't have to go through this all on my own. So they have been living with me for the past few days. It's been almost 2 weeks, and I still haven't filed for divorce yet because I don't have the courage to do it. But Kyle is trying to get me back. He has been texting me almost every day to apologize to me for everything, and he insists that I don't let this minor hiccup in our marriage ruin what we have. I don't understand how he can refer to this other minor hiccup, because as far as I'm concerned, he lied to me for years, and it wasn't really a small lie. It was a pretty big one, and it shook up the literal foundations of our marriage. And I don't think anybody in my place would treat this as something minor or petty, like he's trying to convince me. He's trying to downplay the impact of what has happened so I don't leave him. I can understand that. But what his parents are trying to do is worse because they are trying to vilify me just because I stood up for myself and refused to let Kyle stay with me after he told me that he had had an affair with Nikki. They sent me a long email a couple of days ago and they had a lot to say about all of this. Of course, there was the usual calling me selfish and cold-hearted and whatnot. They also said that since Nikki was no longer in this world, there was no reason for me to be so upset about it because it wasn't as if they would rekindle the affair at any cost. So I had no reason to feel so insecure and go to such lengths. And moreover, since she was dead, it was all the more reason for me to adopt her daughter and live as a family. It was the right thing to do. Long story short, they went all out in their email to make me the bad guy and called me the villain because of the way I was acting. And I seriously don't understand how I am in the wrong here. For a really long time, I have done everything that a good wife would and tried my best to be a good partner to Kyle. But this is something I cannot accept or forgive. Knowing that he cheated on me with someone who visited us several times after that. Knowing that she had been under my roof and we had so many conversations, it makes my skin crawl. The disrespect is astounding, and yet he expected me to accept him and his daughter? The most I can do is feel bad for him, but I cannot let my pride go and adopt his daughter. At the same time, that email has made me rethink a lot of things. I can't really deal with the fact that my in-laws are calling me the villain over something like this. They have always been nice to me even while I was dating Kyle, and as far as I know, they were not aware of the fact that they had a granddaughter. So it was a surprise to them as well. They mentioned in the email as well that if they could accept it, then I shouldn't have any problems doing the same. It's not really the same thing, though, since I was cheated on, so I don't know what they're going on about. But anyway, coming back to the issue at hand, I just want to keep my conscience clear, and I can't talk to my friends about this. Not yet, anyway. So, AITA for kicking my husband out of the house after he brought home his secret daughter because his affair partner passed away. Update 1. Thank you so much, you guys, for the overwhelming response. I'm staying strong, thanks to you guys, and the support of my parents. I told them about the affair and the child and what Kyle had expected of me, and they were nothing but supportive of me. They told me that I had done the right thing by kicking him out because he needed to be taught a lesson and taken down a peg. They told me that it was outrageous that he had even expected that I would accept the two of them and live happily ever after. It was just stupid of him. My father especially was really upset because he hadn't really liked Kyle in the first place, because he thought that my husband was a little too flighty for his taste. The reason for that was that he had switched careers many times, but with very little success. He had a lot of money, but he had barely ever accomplished something because he just kept jumping from one job to another without bothering to stay at one for long enough to find out about his future with the company. And I had always defended him, saying that there was nothing of the sort, but as it turns out, my dad was right about everything. So they are trying to look for good divorce attorneys, and then I can file for divorce because I don't think there's any point in waiting around anymore. He can keep apologizing, but that doesn't mean I'll have to forgive him at any point. And in my heart, I don't think that I can ever forgive him after what he has done. Some things are just never going to be fine, no matter how much you try to make them be. Update 2. Hey, so it's been 2 weeks since I last posted on Reddit. About 4 days ago, I filed for divorce, and my dad found me one of the best attorneys in town. Something that I am grateful for because now the divorce will mostly be in my favor unless he finds someone better. But that is unlikely because even if he does find the best lawyer in the country, he still cheated. Anyway, that's not the point right now. This morning, Kyle was served with divorce papers and he was not pleased about it. Since he got kicked out, he has been texting me every day to try and win me over, but I guess today he realized that I was never coming back. And that did not sit right with him, so instead of just gracefully accepting it and letting go with dignity, he decided to make a scene in front of my house. I guess he has been living with his parents. There's no other explanation, because today, when he showed up in front of my house, his daughter was not with him. And I am thankful that she wasn't, because I don't think any kid would have liked to see what went down next. He started screaming at me from the street and called me a bunch of names. He said that I was the worst and that he regretted ever marrying me. He should have just called off the wedding after that one night with Nikki and married her instead. And then he even started blaming me for her demise. It was just absurd, because he was saying that had I not been his wife, he would have married her and they would have been together, and maybe she still would have been alive today and his daughter would have a mother. I don't even know how he came to that conclusion, because as far as I knew, her car was plowed into by a drunken truck driver. I had absolutely nothing to do with it, so blaming me for something as big as that's just psychotic. And I knew that he was having a breakdown of some sort, so I didn't say anything. But I did call the cops because I wanted him away from me. And then they also started to call asking for an explanation about what was going on, because they knew us and they could recognize Kyle's voice. It was a whole mess. The cops arrived within 15 minutes and had him escorted off my property, because while screaming he had set foot into my garden and I could have him arrested or have pressed charges against him, but I didn't, because I didn't want the drama. I knew that my in-laws would have a lot to say if I did something like that. It just didn't seem worth it, so I let it go. He was let off with a warning, and he seemed reasonably ashamed of himself while he was walking away. It was honestly a really weird day, and I just want it to be over. I really wish that he does not pull off stuff like this during the divorce, because it's all really painful and stressful as it is. I don't need more. Update 3. Hello, so I finally announced my divorce today on social media, because a couple of friends were asking about me and Kyle and how we were doing, because we had not posted anything together in a really long time. Nobody knows, apart from my parents and his parents, what we're going through. And I decided that today I was going to tell everybody that we were getting divorced. They don't need to know the reason why, but it's going to be awkward in the long run. So I think it was important to announce it to people. And I'm so lucky I did, because when I posted it, Nikki's parents reached out to me. They told me that apparently they had been waiting for a post like this after the demise of their daughter and had been checking my profile every day through Nikki's account. And it had finally come through the news that the coast was clear and they could finally tell me the whole truth. They texted me from Nikki's phone, so it was quite freaky, because it was like she was texting me or something. But of course, that was not the case. They told me apparently whatever Kyle had told me about them ending the affair after just one night of hooking up before the wedding was all a big fat lie. Kyle had actually been cheating on me until the day that Nikki passed away. They said that he would come over almost every other weekend and promised Nikki that he would leave me because she was in love with him, and he claimed that he was in love with her as well. The affair had never ended. He just lied to me about it being just one night. Apparently, he had even taken her on weekend getaways a couple of times in the past 2 years. So I guess I was right to file for divorce. He was just trying to make a fool out of me yet again. And this time it might have been even easier for him, since Nikki was not here anymore to deny or confirm the story. It makes me sick to think that he was going to take advantage of the fact that Nikki had passed away and I hadn't posted about the divorce. Her parents never would have reached out to me, and I probably wouldn't have ever found out the truth. It's so scary to think that I could have spent my whole life believing in a lie like this. I'm really happy that I made that post. I also asked them if they would be able to testify against him if it really came down to it, and they agreed readily. They told me that they had never approved of Kyle and Nikki's relationship just because of the fact that he had been cheating on me. If he had refused to marry me once he realized that he had feelings for Nikki and broken off the marriage, it would have been moderately respectable, but instead of doing that, he continued to meet Nikki behind my back because he wasn't ready to give up on me either. They told me that they tested him because he was miserable throughout the pregnancy and even afterward, because he would always promise that he would leave me, but everybody knew that was not going to happen because he cared too much about what other people thought of him to actually leave me. If he left me and then he started going out with Nikki, he would immediately become the bad guy, and he didn't want that. So he was ready to cheat on me and betray my trust and do the same to Nikki and put us both through so much pain because he cared about his reputation. It was just disgusting, and I'm really happy that I decided to file for a divorce because he doesn't deserve to be with me. In fact, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that he doesn't deserve to be with anyone. Or rather, I cannot imagine a woman so horrible that she would deserve to be with him, because he is the worst man on earth. I know that Nikki loved him. I had always known it because it was just so evident. And I know that she had been part of an affair with a married man. But for some reason, I just feel bad for her. Now, it might be the fact that she's gone, but she didn't deserve this. The way her parents put it, she would cry day and night, and the only respite from all the pain was her daughter. She had even been begging him to leave me because she couldn't do this anymore, and even until a week before she passed away, he had promised her that he would leave me soon enough. But these were all false promises, and now there's no need for him to live up to any of it. So I bet he must be very relieved. The only reason he even came clean to me recently was because Nikki's parents were threatening to tell him if he didn't tell me the truth himself. So that's what drove him. And he realized that if he came to me with the truth, he would have more of a chance to manipulate it to suit him and his narrative, which is why he did it himself. He's just a nasty piece of work. I'm going to make sure that I destroy him in the divorce because he doesn't deserve to get away with what he did, both to me or Nikki. I've already told my lawyer everything, and he thinks it's good stuff. Let's see how it goes. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.